Sarah Martinez had always been different from other soldiers at Fort Braxton. While most of her fellow service members covered their tattoos with regulation sleeves, Sarah wore hers proudly when off duty. The intricate wing design that spread across her left shoulder blade was more than just ink on skin. It was a reminder of promises made and dreams that once soared high above the clouds. The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Sarah walked toward the mess hall. Her combat boots clicked rhythmically against the concrete pathway, each step echoing the discipline that had been drilled into her during basic training. At 26 years old, she had been stationed at Fort Braxton for 8 months, long enough to know which soldiers respected her skills and which ones saw her as an easy target for their jokes. Private Thompson was waiting by the entrance, his smirk already forming before Sarah came within earshot. He stood with 3 other soldiers, all of them newer recruits who had arrived just 2 weeks ago. Thompson had made it his mission to find something to tease every female soldier about, and Sarah's wing tattoo had become his favorite subject. "Hey, bird lady," Thompson called out as Sarah approached. "Planning on flying away from training today? Those wings on your back working yet?" The other soldiers snickered, clearly enjoying what they thought was harmless fun. Sarah kept walking, her expression neutral. She had heard worse comments during her years in the military, and Thompson's amateur attempts at humor barely registered as offensive. But something in his tone suggested he was just getting started. "I heard she thinks she's some kind of pilot," one of Thompson's friends whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe she should stick to ground duties where she belongs." Sarah paused at the mess hall door. She turned slowly, her dark eyes meeting Thompson's gaze with the kind of steady confidence that came from years of proving herself in situations where others had underestimated her abilities. The wing tattoo on her shoulder blade seemed to shift slightly in the morning light, its detailed feathers appearing almost lifelike against her tan skin. "You seem very interested in my tattoo, Private Thompson," Sarah said calmly. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had earned her rank through action, not politics. "Is there something specific you'd like to know about it?" Thompson's smirk wavered slightly. He had expected Sarah to either ignore him completely or respond with anger. Her composed question threw him off balance, but his pride wouldn't let him back down in front of his friends. "Just wondering if you got it because you dream about being a real pilot," he said, his voice gaining confidence as his friends nodded encouragingly. "Some people think tattoos make them into something they're not." The comment hung in the air between them. Other soldiers had gathered around, sensing the tension building in what started as simple teasing. Sarah's reputation on base was solid but quiet. She completed her assignments efficiently, helped younger soldiers when they struggled, and never caused drama. But she also never talked much about her background or why she had joined the military. "Dreams are interesting things," Sarah replied, stepping closer to Thompson. "Sometimes they change shape when life takes unexpected turns, but they never really disappear." Her words were measured and calm, but something in her tone made Thompson shift uncomfortably. The way she spoke about dreams sounded like someone who had learned hard lessons about how quickly everything could change. The other soldiers sensed it too, and their laughter began to fade. Sergeant Rodriguez appeared in the doorway of the mess hall, his weathered face taking in the scene with practiced eyes. He had been at Fort Braxton for 12 years and had seen countless conflicts between soldiers. Most of them were easily resolved with a few sharp words and extra duties. But something about this situation felt different. "Everything all right out here?" Rodriguez asked, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made everyone straighten their posture automatically. "Just having a conversation about tattoos, Sergeant," Thompson said quickly, his earlier bravado evaporating in the presence of a superior officer. Rodriguez looked at Sarah, noting the way she stood with perfect military bearing despite the obvious tension. He had worked with her on several assignments and knew she was one of the most reliable soldiers under his command. Her technical skills were exceptional, and her attention to detail had prevented several potential equipment failures during training exercises. "Private Martinez, you're needed in the communications building in 10 minutes, Rodriguez said. "Colonel Harrison wants to speak with you about the new radar system installation." Sarah nodded crisply. "Yes, Sergeant. I'll be there immediately." As she walked away, Thompson couldn't resist one final comment. "Guess the bird lady gets special treatment," he muttered to his friends. Sarah heard the comment, but didn't turn around. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting with words. Her steps remained steady as she headed toward the communications building, but her mind was already shifting to the technical challenges that awaited her. The radar system installation was complex work that required extensive knowledge of electronic systems and aircraft operations. The communications building buzzed with activity as Sarah entered. Technicians were unpacking sensitive equipment, while officers reviewed installation plans on large tables covered with blueprints. Colonel Harrison stood near the center of the chaos, his silver hair reflecting the fluorescent lights as he studied a series of technical manuals. "Private Martinez," the colonel called when he saw her approaching. "Right on time. I need your expertise on this new system." Sarah saluted smartly. "Happy to help, sir. What specific aspect needs attention?" Colonel Harrison gestured toward a massive radar array that dominated one corner of the room. The equipment was cutting-edge technology, far more sophisticated than anything currently installed at Fort Braxton. Its multiple screens and complex control panels suggested capabilities that went well beyond standard military communications. "This system integrates with aircraft navigation in ways our current setup can't handle," the colonel explained. "I need someone who understands both the technical specifications and the practical applications from a pilot's perspective." The comment about pilot perspective made Sarah pause slightly. Her personnel file contained basic information about her military service, but it didn't include details about her civilian background. She had never volunteered information about her life before joining the Army, and most people assumed her technical skills came from military training alone. "I'll do my best to assist, sir," Sarah replied professionally. "Good. The installation team will be here this afternoon, and I want you to oversee the calibration process. This equipment needs to be perfect before we begin advanced training exercises next week." As Sarah examined the technical specifications, her mind automatically began processing the complex relationships between radar frequencies, aircraft positioning systems, and communication protocols. The knowledge came naturally, flowing from years of experience that had nothing to do with her current military training. Outside, Thompson was finishing his breakfast when Corporal Jenkins sat down across from him. Jenkins was older than most of the enlisted soldiers, with 15 years of military experience and a reputation for knowing everything that happened on base. "You might want to be more careful about who you joke with," Jenkins said quietly, cutting into his eggs with deliberate precision. "What do you mean?" Thompson asked, his confidence returning now that Sarah was no longer present. "Private Martinez isn't just another soldier," Jenkins replied. "There are things about her background that might surprise you." Thompson laughed. "Like what?" "She's good with computers and radios. Big deal." Jenkins set down his fork and looked directly at Thompson. "She doesn't talk about her life before the military because she doesn't need to prove anything to people like you. But that wing tattoo you've been making fun of, it has a story behind it that you should probably learn before making more jokes." The older soldier's serious tone made Thompson uncomfortable. He had expected Jenkins to join in the humor, not deliver warnings about respecting fellow soldiers. "What kind of story?" Thompson asked, his curiosity overcoming his defensiveness. "The kind that explains why Colonel Harrison specifically requests her for technical assignments that involve aircraft systems," Jenkins said. "And why she never brags about skills that would make most people on this base look like amateurs." Before Thompson could ask more questions, Jenkins stood up and cleared his tray. Just some friendly advice from someone who's been around long enough to recognize when a soldier has more depth than meets the eye. Thompson watched Jenkins walk away, feeling suddenly uncertain about his morning encounter with Sarah. The confident superiority he had felt earlier was beginning to crack, replaced by the uncomfortable suspicion that he might have misjudged the situation entirely. In the communications building, Sarah worked steadily through the technical documentation, her trained mind automatically identifying potential integration problems and solutions. The radar system was designed for precision operations that required split-second timing and perfect coordination between ground control and aircraft systems. As she studied the specifications, memories began surfacing unbidden. The familiar language of aviation technology brought back images of different equipment, different aircraft, and a different version of herself that felt like a lifetime away. The wing tattoo on her shoulder blade seemed to pulse with phantom warmth, reminding her of promises made and dreams that had been forced to change direction. Colonel Harrison returned to check on her progress, noting the focused intensity with which she examined the technical manuals. Her ability to quickly grasp complex systems had impressed him from the first day she arrived at Fort Braxton, but he sensed there were layers to her competence that went beyond standard military training. "Any concerns about the installation process?" he asked. Sarah looked up from the documentation, her expression thoughtful. "The system is impressive, sir. The integration capabilities will significantly improve our coordination with aircraft operations, but the calibration process will be critical. Any errors could affect communication accuracy during high-speed maneuvers." Her specific mention of high-speed maneuvers and aircraft coordination struck the colonel as unusually detailed for a soldier whose official duties focused on ground-based communications equipment. He made a mental note to review her personnel file more carefully. "I'm confident you'll handle the technical aspects perfectly," he said. "Your attention to detail has been exceptional since you arrived here." As the day progressed, word spread through the base about the new radar installation and Sarah's involvement in the project. Most soldiers knew her as a competent technician, but few understood the full scope of her technical knowledge. Thompson heard fragments of conversations that gradually began to paint a picture he hadn't expected. "She's working on the new aircraft coordination system," one soldier mentioned in passing. "Colonel Harrison specifically requested her for the project," another added. "I heard she understands those systems better than some of the officers," a third voice contributed. Each comment added to Thompson's growing realization that his assumptions about Sarah might have been completely wrong. The confidence he had felt that morning was steadily eroding, replaced by curiosity about what he might not know about the soldier he had been mocking. As evening approached, Sarah completed her initial assessment of the radar system and prepared her recommendations for the installation team. The work had been engaging and challenging, requiring the kind of technical expertise that made her feel most confident in her abilities. For a few hours, she had been able to focus entirely on solving complex problems without thinking about the social dynamics that sometimes made military life complicated. The sun was setting as she walked back toward the barracks, her mind still processing technical details and potential solutions. Tomorrow would bring the actual installation process, and she wanted to be prepared for any complications that might arise. The project was important not just for the base's operational capabilities, but for proving that she could handle advanced assignments regardless of what some soldiers might think about her background. Thompson was sitting on the steps outside the barracks when Sarah approached. He had been waiting for nearly an hour, working up the courage to say something that wouldn't make the situation worse. His friends had gone inside, leaving him alone with his growing awareness that he owed someone an apology. "Private Martinez," he said as she reached the steps. Sarah paused, her expression neutral but alert. After the morning's encounter, she wasn't sure what to expect from another conversation with Thompson. "I wanted to apologize for this morning," he continued. his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine uncertainty. "I think I may have made some incorrect assumptions." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of sincerity or additional mockery. What she saw was a young soldier who appeared genuinely uncomfortable with his own behavior, which was more than she had expected. "Assumptions can be dangerous in military situations," she replied diplomatically. "It's usually better to gather accurate information before drawing conclusions." Thompson nodded, feeling both relieved that she was willing to respond and embarrassed by the gentle correction in her words. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I may or may not answer." "The wing tattoo," he said carefully. "I get the feeling there's more to it than I realized." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering how much truth she was willing to share with someone who had spent the morning making jokes at her expense. The wing tattoo was deeply personal, connected to a part of her life that she rarely discussed with anyone on base. "There usually is more to most things than people realize," she finally said. "The important thing is learning to look beyond surface appearances before making judgments." Her answer was diplomatic but firm, neither revealing personal details nor entirely shutting down the conversation. Thompson found himself respecting both her privacy and her ability to handle his curiosity without making him feel completely foolish. "I'll remember that," he said, standing up as she moved toward the barracks entrance. "Good," Sarah replied. "Tomorrow's going to be a busy day." The new radar system installation requires everyone to be focused on their duties. As she disappeared into the barracks, Thompson remained on the steps, thinking about the day's events and his changing perception of the soldier he had underestimated. Something told him that tomorrow would bring revelations that would make his morning jokes seem even more inappropriate than they already felt. The installation team arrived at Fort Braxton before dawn, their convoy of specialized vehicles creating a small traffic jam at the main gate. Sarah was already in the communications building, having arrived 2 hours early to prepare the workspace and review the technical specifications one final time. The radar system components lay carefully arranged across multiple tables, each piece representing months of engineering development and millions of dollars in advanced technology. Colonel Harrison entered the building carrying 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Sarah as he surveyed the organized chaos of equipment and documentation. The early morning light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the technical manuals and installation guides that Sarah had been studying since before sunrise. "The installation supervisor will be here in 30 minutes, the colonel said, settling into a chair beside the main equipment table. "I want you to work directly with their lead technician to ensure everything integrates properly with our existing systems." Sarah nodded, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I've identified 3 potential compatibility issues that we should address during the initial setup phase. The frequency calibrations need to be precise, or we'll get interference with the aircraft navigation systems." Her detailed analysis impressed the colonel, but also reinforced his growing curiosity about her background. The level of technical expertise she consistently demonstrated went far beyond what he would expect from someone with her official military training record. "Have you worked with similar systems before joining the Army?" he asked casually. The question hung in the air for a moment. Sarah had been expecting someone to ask eventually, especially as her involvement with more advanced projects made her knowledge increasingly obvious to observant officers. She took a careful sip of coffee before responding. "I have some experience with aircraft communication systems," she said diplomatically. "Different context, but similar technical principles." Before the colonel could ask for clarification, the installation team's supervisor entered the building. Marcus Webb was a civilian contractor with 25 years of experience installing military communication equipment. His weathered hands and confident demeanor suggested someone who had solved countless technical challenges in environments ranging from desert bases to aircraft carriers. "You must be Private Martinez," Webb said, extending his hand to Sarah. "I've been briefed on your technical background. Colonel Harrison speaks very highly of your expertise." Sarah shook his hand firmly, noting the calluses that came from years of hands-on technical work. "Happy to assist with the installation, Mr. Webb. I've reviewed the specifications and identified some potential integration issues we should address." Webb's expression shifted from polite professionalism to genuine interest. Most military personnel he worked with were competent, but relied heavily on his team's expertise. Having someone who had already identified potential problems suggested a level of technical sophistication he rarely encountered. "Show me what you found," he said, moving toward the technical documentation. For the next hour, Sarah walked Webb through her analysis, pointing out frequency conflicts, power distribution concerns, and calibration requirements that could affect the system's performance. Her explanations were precise and detailed, demonstrating understanding that went well beyond theoretical knowledge. Webb found himself increasingly impressed by her grasp of complex technical relationships. Her questions about aircraft integration protocols were particularly sophisticated, suggesting experience with aviation systems that extended beyond basic military communications training. "You've identified issues that my team probably wouldn't have caught until we were deep into the installation process," Webb admitted. "This kind of analysis usually takes our specialists several hours of hands-on testing." Outside the communications building, word was spreading about the major installation project taking place. Soldiers gathered in small groups during breaks, speculating about the new equipment and its potential impact on base operations. Thompson found himself listening to conversations with growing interest, particularly when Sarah's name came up. "She's working directly with the installation team," Corporal Martinez mentioned to a group near the mess hall. "Colonel Harrison specifically requested her for the project." "I heard the equipment is worth more than most people make in 10 years, another soldier added. "They wouldn't put just anyone in charge of something that expensive." Thompson's friend Peterson leaned closer to the group. "Maybe we should cut back on the jokes about her tattoo. Sounds like she might be more important than we realized." The comment made Thompson uncomfortable. His apology the previous evening had been sincere, but hearing other soldiers discuss Sarah's capabilities made him realize how completely he had misjudged the situation. The confident superiority he had felt when making jokes about her wing tattoo now seemed foolish and potentially embarrassing. Back in the communications building, the installation work was proceeding ahead of schedule thanks to Sarah's preparatory analysis. Her ability to anticipate problems and suggest solutions had impressed not only Webb, but also his entire technical team. They found themselves asking for her input on decisions that would normally be made without consulting military personnel. During a break in the installation process, Webb approached Sarah with a question that had been building in his mind all morning. "Can I ask where you developed your knowledge of aircraft communication systems? Your understanding of these integration protocols is remarkably sophisticated." Sarah had been expecting this conversation. Her technical expertise was becoming too obvious to ignore, and she knew that continued evasion would only create more questions. She glanced toward Colonel Harrison, who was reviewing installation progress reports, then made a decision about how much truth she was ready to share. "I spent several years working with aircraft systems before joining the Army," she said carefully. "Different environment, but the technical principles translate well to military applications." Webb nodded slowly, processing this information. "Commercial aviation?" he asked. "Something like that," Sarah replied, her tone suggesting that further details weren't open for discussion. The diplomatic response satisfied Webb's immediate curiosity while making it clear that Sarah's background contained elements she wasn't ready to discuss fully. He respected her privacy, but filed the information away, understanding now why her technical insights had been so valuable. As the afternoon progressed, The installation reached its most critical phase. The radar array needed to be calibrated with precision that would affect every aircraft operation conducted from Fort Braxton. Even small errors could result in communication failures that might compromise safety during training exercises or emergency situations. Sarah worked closely with Webb's lead technician, monitoring frequency responses and signal strength as they fine-tuned the system's parameters. Her ability to recognize subtle variations in the equipment's performance impressed everyone involved in the process. The signal pattern looks good, but we're getting slight interference on the secondary channel, the technician reported, studying readings on his diagnostic equipment. Sarah leaned over the control panel, her trained eye scanning the array of indicators and digital displays. Something about the frequency pattern looked familiar, triggering memories of similar calibration challenges she had faced in a very different context. Try adjusting the phase relationship by 2 degrees, she suggested. The interference might be caused by harmonic resonance between the primary and secondary transmitters. The technician made the adjustment, and the interference immediately cleared. The signal strength improved significantly, and all diagnostic readings moved into optimal ranges. Webb watched the improvement with obvious satisfaction, then turned to Sarah with newfound respect. "That was exactly the right solution," he said. "How did you know to make that specific adjustment?" Sarah hesitated, realizing that her suggestion had revealed more technical expertise than she had intended. The solution had come automatically, based on experience with similar systems in situations where precision calibration had been critical for flight safety. "Pattern recognition," she said simply. The frequency relationships looked familiar. Before Webb could ask follow-up questions, Colonel Harrison approached the control station. He had been observing the installation process throughout the day, noting how naturally Sarah had assumed a leadership role in the technical work. "How are we progressing?" the colonel asked. "Ahead of schedule and exceeding performance specifications," Webb reported. "Private Martinez's technical contributions have been exceptional. Without her analysis and troubleshooting skills, we would still be working through calibration problems." Colonel Harrison studied Sarah's face, seeing a combination of professional satisfaction and slight discomfort with the public recognition. Her technical abilities had been evident since her arrival at Fort Braxton, but today's performance suggested depths of expertise that her personnel file didn't adequately explain. "Outstanding work, Private Martinez," he said. "I'll make sure your contributions are noted in my report." As evening approached, the installation team prepared to conduct final testing of the radar system. This phase would involve coordination with actual aircraft to verify that all communication and navigation functions worked perfectly under real operational conditions. "We'll need someone who understands both sides of the communication process," Webb explained to Colonel Harrison. "Ground control operations and aircraft systems integration." The colonel looked at Sarah, who had been quietly reviewing test protocols while the conversation continued around her. Her technical expertise had been proven throughout the day, but the final testing phase would require knowledge that went beyond ground-based systems. "Private Martinez, are you comfortable overseeing the aircraft coordination aspects of the test?" he asked. The question created a moment of silence in the room. Everyone understood that coordinating with aircraft systems required specialized knowledge that most ground personnel didn't possess. Sarah felt the weight of multiple gazes as she considered how to respond. "I can handle the coordination requirements," she said finally, her voice steady despite her awareness that accepting this responsibility would raise additional questions about her background. Outside the communications building, soldiers were gathering for evening formations when an unusual sound caught their attention. A military transport aircraft was approaching the base, its engines creating the distinctive noise that always made people look up at the sky. Thompson was walking toward the barracks when he heard the aircraft overhead. Something about the sound made him pause and watch as the plane circled the base before beginning its approach to the runway. The sight reminded him of his morning encounter with Sarah and the wing tattoo that had seemed like such an easy target for jokes. "That's a C-130, Peterson said, joining Thompson as they watched the aircraft's approach. "Wonder what brings a transport plane here this late in the day." "Probably connected to the new equipment installation," Thompson replied, his mind making connections he hadn't considered before. The aircraft's arrival coinciding with the radar system testing seemed too convenient to be accidental. In the communications building, Sarah was coordinating with the approaching aircraft's pilot through the newly installed radar system. Her voice was calm and professional as she provided approach guidance and verified that all communication channels were functioning properly. "Fort Braxton Ground Control. This is Transport 74, reading you clearly on all frequencies," the pilot's voice came through the speakers. "Transport 74, Fort Braxton Ground Control confirms clear communication on all channels. Please proceed with navigation system verification," Sarah responded, her tone carrying the confident authority of someone experienced in aircraft coordination. Webb watched her handle the communication protocol with obvious expertise. Her knowledge of proper procedures and technical terminology exceeded what he would expect from someone whose primary duties involved ground-based equipment maintenance. "Private Martinez," he said quietly during a brief pause in the radio communication, "your familiarity with aircraft coordination protocols is impressive. That kind of expertise usually takes years to develop." Sarah continued monitoring the radar displays as she responded. "Experience has a way of building up over time," she said diplomatically. The aircraft completed its approach and landing successfully, with all communication and navigation systems performing flawlessly. The radar installation had passed its first real-world test with perfect results, due in large part to Sarah's technical expertise and coordination skills. As the testing concluded, Colonel Harrison approached Sarah with an expression that combined professional satisfaction with personal curiosity. The day's events had provided clear evidence that her capabilities extended far beyond her official military training and duties. "Exceptional work today, Private Martinez," he said. "Your contributions made the difference between a routine installation and an outstanding success." Sarah nodded professionally, but her discomfort with public recognition was becoming more obvious. She preferred to let her work speak for itself rather than drawing attention to her background or capabilities. "Just doing my job, sir," she replied. "Perhaps we should discuss expanding your official responsibilities," the colonel suggested. "Your technical expertise could be valuable for other advanced projects." The suggestion hung in the air as Sarah considered its implications. Accepting expanded responsibilities would mean more scrutiny of her background and capabilities, potentially leading to questions she wasn't ready to answer. But declining might seem suspicious or ungrateful. "I'm happy to assist wherever needed, sir," she said carefully. As the installation team prepared to depart, Webb approached Sarah one final time. Throughout the day, he had developed professional respect for her abilities that extended beyond simple appreciation for technical competence. "If you ever decide to pursue civilian opportunities in aviation technology, you should contact me," he said, handing her his business card. "Companies in this field are always looking for people with your level of expertise." Sarah accepted the card politely but without enthusiasm. "Thank you for the consideration, Mr. Webb. I'm committed to my military service." Her response was diplomatic but firm, making it clear that she had no immediate interest in civilian opportunities. Webb respected her dedication while filing away his assessment of her capabilities for future reference. As the day ended, soldiers throughout Fort Braxton had heard fragments of information about the successful radar installation and Sarah's central role in the project. The stories grew more detailed with each telling, creating a picture of technical expertise that surprised many people who had known her only as a competent but quiet soldier. Thompson found himself thinking about the morning's events with increasing discomfort. His jokes about Sarah's wing tattoo now seemed not just inappropriate, but potentially insulting to someone whose capabilities and background were clearly more complex than he had realized. During evening formation, Sergeant Rodriguez made brief comments about the successful equipment installation and the professional excellence demonstrated by all personnel involved. His specific mention of outstanding technical contributions made several soldiers glance toward Sarah, who maintained her usual composed expression despite the attention. After formation, Thompson approached Corporal Jenkins, hoping to learn more about the background hints that had been troubling him throughout the day. Jenkins was cleaning his equipment in the maintenance building, working with the methodical precision that came from years of military routine. "The comments you made this morning about Private Martinez," Thompson began hesitantly. "I think I need to understand what you were trying to tell me." Jenkins looked up from his cleaning, studying Thompson's face for signs of genuine interest versus idle curiosity. What he saw was a young soldier who appeared genuinely concerned about having made a serious mistake. "What did you observe about her work today?" Jenkins asked, instead of answering directly. Thompson considered the question carefully. "She seemed to know a lot more about aircraft systems than I would have expected, and the installation team treated her like an expert, not just an assistant." "Good observations," Jenkins said. "What conclusions do you draw from that?" "That maybe her background is more complicated than I assumed," Thompson admitted. "And that my jokes this morning were probably based on ignorance about who she really is." Jenkins nodded slowly, seeming satisfied with Thompson's analysis. "The wing tattoo you were making fun of represents something important to her, something connected to a part of her life that she doesn't talk about because she doesn't need to prove anything to people who wouldn't understand anyway." The explanation was vague, but carried implications that made Thompson increasingly uncomfortable with his own behavior. He sensed that Jenkins knew more specific details, but wasn't willing to share them without Sarah's permission. "Should I apologize again?" Thompson asked. "You should treat her with the respect due to a fellow soldier who has clearly earned her position through competence and dedication," Jenkins replied. "And maybe learn to look beyond surface appearances before making assumptions about people." As Thompson left the maintenance building, his mind was occupied with growing awareness that his understanding of Sarah Martinez had been incomplete and potentially unfair. The wing tattoo that had seemed like such an easy target for humor was beginning to feel like a symbol of something significant that he had failed to recognize. In her quarters, Sarah was reviewing the day's technical documentation and preparing reports on the radar installation's success. The work had been professionally satisfying, but it had also raised her profile on base in ways that made her slightly uncomfortable. Her wing tattoo seemed to pulse with memories as she worked, reminding her of a different time when technical expertise and aircraft coordination had been central to her identity in ways that had nothing to do with military service. The successful installation had felt familiar, triggering muscle memory and professional instincts that belonged to a version of herself she rarely allowed others to see. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and potentially more questions about her background. The radar system's success had proven her capabilities beyond doubt, but it had also made her technical expertise impossible to ignore or downplay. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah wondered whether the time was approaching when she would need to be more open about the experiences that had shaped her knowledge and skills. The wing tattoo was just the visible symbol of a story that ran much deeper than most people on Fort Braxton could imagine. The emergency alarm shattered the pre-dawn quiet at Fort Braxton, sending soldiers scrambling from their bunks as the base-wide communication system crackled to life. Sarah was already awake, having spent another restless night thinking about the previous day's revelations and the growing attention her technical expertise was receiving. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to emergency stations immediately. The urgency in the announcement sent adrenaline coursing through Sarah's system, as she quickly dressed and headed toward the communications building. Emergency situations often required the most advanced technical capabilities available, and after yesterday's successful radar installation, she suspected her involvement would be needed. The communications building was buzzing with controlled chaos as officers coordinated response efforts to what appeared to be a developing crisis situation. Multiple screens displayed weather data, aircraft tracking information, and emergency communication channels that painted a picture of serious trouble developing somewhere beyond the base perimeter. Colonel Harrison spotted Sarah entering the building and immediately waved her toward the Central Command Station. His expression was grim, and the tension in his voice suggested a situation that would test everyone's capabilities to their limits. "Private Martinez, we have a situation that requires your expertise," he said without preamble. "A civilian aircraft is down approximately 40 miles north of here. Search and rescue operations are being hampered by severe weather conditions and communication difficulties." Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she absorbed the information. Aircraft emergencies triggered professional instincts that had been dormant but never forgotten, bringing back memories of situations where technical expertise and quick thinking had meant the difference between life and death. "What kind of aircraft, sir?" she asked, her mind already beginning to process the technical challenges involved in coordinating search and rescue operations under difficult conditions. "Twin-engine commercial transport with 8 passengers and crew," the colonel replied. "The aircraft lost contact with air traffic control 30 minutes ago. Last known position was approximately here." He pointed to a location on the large tactical display where weather radar showed intense storm activity. The combination of mountainous terrain and severe weather created search conditions that would challenge even the most experienced rescue teams. "Our search aircraft are having communication problems because of atmospheric interference," Colonel Harrison continued. "The new radar system you helped install yesterday might be able to penetrate the weather better than our older equipment." Sarah studied the tactical display, noting wind patterns, precipitation intensity, and terrain features that would affect both the missing aircraft and any rescue operations. Her analysis was automatic and thorough, drawing on experience that went far beyond her current military training. "The atmospheric conditions will definitely interfere with standard communication frequencies," she said, "but if we adjust the radar parameters and use focused beam patterns, we might be able to establish contact with search aircraft even in the storm." Her confident assessment surprised several officers who were listening to the conversation. The technical modifications she was suggesting required sophisticated understanding of both radar technology and aircraft communication systems under emergency conditions. "Can you make those modifications?" Colonel Harrison asked. "Yes, sir. It will take about 20 minutes to reconfigure the system parameters." As Sarah moved toward the radar control station, Thompson was among a group of soldiers being briefed on potential ground support roles for the search and rescue operation. The emergency had created a sense of urgency that made his concerns about the previous day's conversations seem trivial in comparison. "Weather conditions are deteriorating rapidly," Sergeant Rodriguez explained to the assembled soldiers. "If the search aircraft can't establish contact with the missing plane soon, we may need ground teams to access the search area." The prospect of venturing into mountainous terrain during a severe storm made every soldier in the briefing room understand the seriousness of the situation. Search and rescue operations under these conditions would be dangerous for everyone involved. "Private Martinez is working to improve our communication capabilities with the search aircraft," Rodriguez continued. "Her technical expertise may be critical to coordinating the entire operation." The comment made Thompson glance toward the communications building, where he could see activity through the windows as technical personnel worked to modify equipment for the emergency. His growing awareness of Sarah's capabilities now took on new significance as he realized her knowledge might literally save lives. In the communications building, Sarah was deep in concentration as she adjusted radar parameters with the precision of someone who had performed similar modifications under pressure before. Her fingers moved confidently across control panels as she fine-tuned frequency settings and beam patterns. "Signal strength is improving," reported the technician monitoring the system's performance. "We're getting much clearer returns from the search area." "Good," Sarah replied without looking up from her work. "Now we need to establish communication with the search aircraft and coordinate their search patterns to maximize coverage efficiency." Her use of technical terminology and operational concepts impressed Colonel Harrison, who was observing the modification process with growing recognition that Sarah's expertise extended well beyond anything in her official military record. "Private Martinez," he said quietly, moving closer to the control station. "Your knowledge of search and rescue communication protocols is remarkably sophisticated. This level of expertise usually requires specialized training and considerable experience." The observation hung in the air as Sarah continued working on the radar modifications. She had been expecting someone to make this connection eventually, especially after her performance during the previous day's installation, and now her ability to handle emergency technical requirements. "Emergency situations require using whatever knowledge and experience you have available," she replied diplomatically, still focused on the equipment adjustments. Before Colonel Harrison could pursue the conversation further, the radio speakers crackled with an incoming transmission from one of the search aircraft. "Fort Braxton Control, this is Search 27. We're receiving your transmission clearly for the first time since entering the search area. Requesting coordination guidance for grid pattern search." Sarah immediately moved to the communication station, her voice taking on the calm authority that came naturally when coordinating aircraft operations under difficult conditions. "Search 27, Fort Braxton Control. Suggest beginning search pattern at grid reference Alpha 74, proceeding northwest at 2-mile intervals. Be advised, terrain elevation increases significantly beyond grid reference Bravo 21. Her guidance was precise and professional, demonstrating familiarity with search and rescue protocols that surprised everyone listening to the radio communication. The search aircraft pilot responded immediately, clearly recognizing the competence in her instructions. "Fort Braxton Control. Understand search pattern Alpha 74 proceeding northwest. Request weather updates and terrain advisories as we progress." "Roger, Search 27. Weather conditions show continued deterioration with wind gusts exceeding 40 knots. Recommend maintaining altitude above 3,000 feet to clear terrain obstacles." The technical dialogue continued as Sarah coordinated with multiple search aircraft, providing navigation guidance and weather updates while monitoring the modified radar system for any signs of the missing aircraft. Her performance was flawless, demonstrating expertise that seemed to come from extensive experience rather than theoretical training. Webb, the civilian installation supervisor, had returned to the base to monitor his equipment's performance during its first emergency deployment. He stood near the radar control station, observing Sarah's work with professional fascination. "She's handling this coordination like someone with years of flight operations experience," he commented quietly to Colonel Harrison. "The technical modifications she made to improve signal penetration were exactly what the situation required." Colonel Harrison nodded, his expression thoughtful, as he watched Sarah manage multiple communication channels while monitoring radar displays for any indication of the missing aircraft's location. "Her personnel file doesn't adequately explain her level of expertise," he admitted. "There are clearly aspects of her background that haven't been fully documented." Outside the communications building, soldiers were preparing emergency supplies and ground search equipment in case weather conditions prevented aircraft from completing the rescue operation. Thompson found himself working alongside Peterson as they loaded medical supplies and communication equipment into vehicles. "Think they'll find the missing plane?" Peterson asked as they secured equipment in the back of a transport truck. "If anyone can coordinate the search effectively, it sounds like Private Martinez has the expertise to make it happen," Thompson replied. his respect for Sarah's capabilities growing with each radio transmission he overheard from the communications building. His change in attitude towards Sarah hadn't gone unnoticed by other soldiers, particularly those who had witnessed his jokes about her wing tattoo the previous morning. The contrast between his earlier mockery and current respect illustrated how quickly perceptions could change when faced with evidence of real competence. Inside the communications building, Sarah was coordinating with a third search aircraft when the radar display suddenly showed a faint but distinctive return from the target area. Her trained eye immediately recognized the signature as potentially artificial rather than natural terrain features. "I'm getting a possible contact at grid reference Bravo 17, she announced, her voice maintaining professional calm despite the significance of the potential discovery. "Signal strength is weak, but the return pattern suggests metallic objects consistent with aircraft wreckage." The room fell silent as everyone focused on the radar display. After hours of unsuccessful searching, any potential contact with the missing aircraft represented hope for survivors who might still need rescue. "Search 27, Fort Braxton Control. We have a possible radar contact at grid reference Bravo 17. Request you proceed to that location and conduct visual search of the area." "Fort Braxton Control, search 27 proceeding to Bravo 17. Weather conditions are marginal for visual search, but we'll make the attempt." The tension in the communications building was palpable as everyone waited for confirmation of what the radar contact might represent. Sarah monitored the search aircraft's approach to the target area while continuing to fine-tune the radar parameters to provide the clearest possible information. "Fort Braxton Control, search 27, has visual contact with aircraft wreckage at the reported location. We can see survivors moving near the crash site. Requesting immediate medical evacuation support." The confirmation of survivors brought immediate relief and renewed urgency to the rescue operation. Sarah quickly switched to coordination with medical evacuation aircraft while maintaining communication with the search teams now working to assess the situation on the ground. "Medivac 14, Fort Braxton Control. We have confirmed survivors at crash site Bravo 17. Weather conditions remain challenging, but landing zone appears viable for helicopter operations." Her coordination with the medical evacuation team demonstrated the same professional expertise she had shown throughout the search operation. Every instruction was precise, every update was timely, and every decision reflected understanding of both technical requirements and operational realities. Colonel Harrison watched her performance with growing amazement. Her ability to manage complex emergency coordination while maintaining perfect situational awareness exceeded the capabilities of officers with years of specialized training in search and rescue operations. As the medical evacuation proceeded successfully, with all survivors recovered from the crash site, Sarah finally allowed herself to step back from the communication station. The operation had been completed flawlessly, with technical modifications and coordination that had proven critical to the rescue's success. "Outstanding work, Private Martinez," Colonel Harrison said as the emergency phase of the operation concluded. "Your technical expertise and coordination skills were instrumental in saving those lives." Sarah nodded professionally, but her discomfort with public recognition was evident. She had performed her duties to the best of her abilities, but the attention her performance was receiving made her increasingly aware that continued evasion about her background was becoming impossible. "Just glad we could help, sir," she replied quietly. Webb approached Sarah as she began shutting down the modified radar systems and returning equipment to standard operating parameters. His expression combined professional admiration with obvious curiosity about the source of her exceptional capabilities. "The modifications you made to improve signal penetration were exactly what the situation required," he said. "That kind of technical innovation usually comes from extensive hands-on experience with similar emergency situations." Sarah continued her work without looking up. aware that her performance during the rescue operation had revealed more about her background than she had intended. The technical expertise and operational knowledge she had demonstrated could only have come from specific types of training and experience. "Emergency situations require creative solutions," she said diplomatically. "True," Webb agreed. "But the specific solutions you implemented suggest familiarity with aircraft emergency procedures that goes well beyond standard military communications training." Before Sarah could respond, Sergeant Rodriguez entered the communications building to brief Colonel Harrison on the successful conclusion of the ground support preparations. His presence provided a natural interruption to Webb's inquiries, but Sarah knew that more questions were inevitable. As the day progressed and normal base operations resumed, word spread quickly about the successful search and rescue operation and Sarah's central role in coordinating the technical aspects that had made the rescue possible. Stories were shared in the mess hall, during break periods, and wherever soldiers gathered to discuss the morning's dramatic events. Thompson found himself listening to these conversations with a mixture of admiration and embarrassment about his own earlier behavior. The contrast between his jokes about Sarah's wing tattoo and her actual capabilities was becoming impossible to ignore. "She saved those people's lives with her technical expertise," one soldier commented during lunch. "The search aircraft couldn't even communicate effectively until she modified the radar systems. I heard she coordinated the entire rescue operation like she'd been doing it for years," another added. Colonel Harrison said her performance was exceptional. Each comment reinforced Thompson's growing realization that his assumptions about Sarah had been completely wrong. The wing tattoo he had mocked now seemed like a symbol of accomplishments and experiences he had failed to recognize or respect. During afternoon duties, Thompson made a decision to approach Sarah directly. His earlier apology had been sincere but incomplete, based on limited understanding of how seriously he had misjudged her background and capabilities. He found Sarah in the maintenance building, performing routine equipment checks with the same methodical precision she brought to all her technical work. She looked up when he approached, her expression neutral but alert. "Private Martinez," he began carefully, "I wanted to speak with you about this morning's rescue operation." Sarah continued her equipment inspection as she responded. "It was a successful mission with good outcomes for everyone involved." "Your performance was incredible," Thompson said. "The way you handled the technical coordination and aircraft communication was like watching an expert with years of specialized experience." He paused, gathering courage for what he needed to say next. "It made me realize that my comments yesterday about your tattoo were based on complete ignorance about who you are and what you're capable of." Sarah stopped working and looked at him directly for the first time since he had approached. His expression showed genuine regret and what appeared to be sincere respect for her capabilities. "Assumptions can be dangerous," she said quietly. "In emergency situations, they can cost lives. In social situations, they can cost respect and understanding." Her response was gentle but firm, making it clear that she had heard his apology while also delivering a lesson about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances. "Can you tell me about the wing tattoo?" Thompson asked. "I get the feeling it represents something important that I should understand." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering how much of her story she was ready to share. The successful rescue operation had made her technical expertise impossible to hide, and she sensed that continued evasion about her background would only create more speculation and curiosity. "The wings represent a promise I made to someone important," she said finally. "A promise about using whatever skills and knowledge I have to help people when they need it most." Her answer was still somewhat vague, but it carried emotional weight that made Thompson understand the tattoo was connected to something deeply personal and meaningful. "Someone in aviation?" he asked carefully. Sarah nodded slowly. "My brother was a pilot, He died in an aircraft accident 3 years ago trying to rescue hikers caught in a mountain storm. The revelation hit Thompson with unexpected force. The wing tattoo suddenly made perfect sense as a memorial to someone who had died helping others, and Sarah's technical expertise now had a context that explained both its sophistication and its emotional significance. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said sincerely, "and I'm sorry for making jokes about something that honors his memory." "He would have been proud of today's rescue operation," Sarah replied. Using technical knowledge to save lives was exactly what he believed in. As their conversation concluded, Thompson felt a profound shift in his understanding of both Sarah and the importance of treating fellow soldiers with respect based on their character rather than assumptions about their backgrounds. The wing tattoo would never again seem like an appropriate target for humor. That evening, Colonel Harrison called Sarah to his office for a private conversation about her future role at Fort Braxton. The day's events had made it clear that her capabilities extended far beyond her current duties, and the military needed people with her expertise in positions where they could make the greatest impact. "Your performance today was exceptional," he began as Sarah took a seat across from his desk. "The technical modifications you made and the coordination skills you demonstrated saved lives and reflected expertise that the military values highly." Sarah listened carefully, sensing that this conversation would have significant implications for her future assignments and responsibilities. "I'm recommending you for advanced technical training and expanded responsibilities in emergency coordination," the colonel continued. "Your background, whatever its specific details, has prepared you for roles that could benefit many people." The recommendation was both an honor and a challenge. Accepting expanded responsibilities would mean more scrutiny of her capabilities and background, but it would also provide opportunities to use her knowledge in ways that could help others. "I'm committed to serving wherever the military needs me most, sir," Sarah replied. "Good. There's one more thing," Colonel Harrison said, his expression becoming more personal. "Your technical expertise and operational knowledge clearly come from experiences beyond basic military training. You don't need to share details you're not comfortable discussing, but I want you to know that whatever brought you to the military, we're fortunate to have your capabilities available." His acknowledgement of her privacy while recognizing her contributions felt like the respectful recognition Sarah had hoped for but rarely received. She nodded gratefully, appreciating his understanding. As Sarah left the colonel's office, she felt a sense of resolution about the events of the past 2 days. Her technical expertise was now recognized and valued. Her contributions had made a real difference in a life-threatening situation, and she had found a way to honor her brother's memory through service to others. The wing tattoo on her shoulder blade seemed to pulse with warmth as she walked back to the barracks, reminding her of promises made and dreams that had found new expression through military service. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight she felt the satisfaction of using her knowledge and skills exactly as her brother would have wanted. In the barracks, other soldiers treated her with the respectful recognition that came from witnessing exceptional performance under pressure. The jokes and casual dismissals that had characterized some interactions were replaced by genuine appreciation for her capabilities and contributions. Thompson and his friends nodded respectfully as she passed, their earlier mockery replaced by understanding of what the wing tattoo really represented. The base had learned an important lesson about looking beyond appearances and recognizing the depth of experience and commitment that individual soldiers brought to their service. As Sarah prepared for sleep, she reflected on how a single emergency had changed everything about her position at Fort Braxton. Her technical expertise was now valued, her background was respected even without full disclosure, and her future held opportunities to use her knowledge in service of others who might need her help. The wing tattoo was no longer a target for jokes or casual dismissal. It had revealed itself as a symbol of capability, commitment, and the kind of quiet heroism that emerged when technical expertise combined with dedication to helping others in their darkest moments. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight the base understood exactly who Private Sarah Martinez really was and why her wings represented so much more than ink on skin.